I am not going to let them run me out of here. Is this you? I'm talking to Black women in toxic jobs. If you are currently in a toxic job, toxic or hostile job, and you are saying, I am not going to I'm not going to let them run me out of here in relation to your job. You are on a mission to prove to your job that they're not going to run you out of this good job. If that is you, then you are in the right place. I am Dr. Kimani. If you don't know me already, I'm Dr. Kimani. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, a toxic job survivor. More importantly, I'm a toxic job liberator for Black women. And I am the co host with Marissa Price of the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black Women, which helps Black women with the how to get prepared, how to get your exit plan to leave a toxic or hostile job. If you want to access the replay, because we ushered over 300 Black women to freedom at the summit. So if you want the replay, I will have that information in the description section as well as going across the screen. Today, I'm so excited that we have one of our speakers from the Job Liberation Virtual Summit. And if you have not seen her viral video, I mean, it is on fire, okay? So when I saw that video, it was the first 2 minutes. I started watching the video, I paused it, and I texted Amarie. I was like, Amarie, we got to talk about this issue because I'm hearing about this way too much. And the video that she did, again, check it out. I'll put it in the description section. Not letting them run you out ain't the flex you think it is, okay? So, Amarie, I'm going to have you introduce yourself. We're going to get right into the conversation.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me, Kimani.
Yes.
I'm Anne-Marie, aka the Anti-HR HR Lady. I am the founder of the Anti-HR HR Consultancy, where I teach employees about understanding their workplace rights, recognizing when their workplace rights are being violated, and how to assert their rights in the workplace. I specifically create my content primarily for Black women employees, but apparently everybody is enjoying my content as well, because I
Yes.
get people from all over of every type contacting me, and I'm happy to help everyone. But I always try to be very clear that the reason I started doing this work, the reason I created the channel, the reason I created this business was because of my experiences as a Black woman in corporate America. And when I made my escape, I wanted to help other women, other employees, but especially employees that looked like me, to understand that they had rights in the workplace that they could assert, and that they could use those wrongdoings by their employers to create a different kind of life for themselves, which is what I did. So I'm really happy to be here and to talk to you about this, because I made the video because I was hearing this from people. I do
Way
discovery
too
calls.
much.
I do discovery calls, and people will sign up for discovery calls. And I was hearing it, and I heard it in two particular instances recently that really bothered me. And so I was literally getting ready to go somewhere, and I was like, you know what, while I put my makeup on, I'm going to get this off my chest because it was really bothering me.
Yeah.
So I said it, and I had no expectation that anybody was going to care about what I had to say, because it wasn't like one of my structured videos around a subject. It was just, this thing was bothering me because I had had a person literally was whispering while they were talking to me because they were worried that they were being watched.
Wow.
And yet was insisting to me that they were going to hang on until retirement, and they would hang on, and they had figured out a way to be transferred. And I was saying to them, you know, even if you get transferred, your work environment is toxic.
Yes, the whole system.
When you've got to be whispering in the parking lot to
Oh my gosh.
call, something's not right, right?
And you think that they can find out what you're doing, right?
Yeah,
The plantation mentality. Yes.
that's not right. And that she was so adamant that she needed to stay in this situation. Really, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And before that, I had an actual client who I was working with, and midway through our engagement announced to me that she decided she was going to stay and fight for this job that was discriminating against her. They were abusing her in so many different ways. A multi-million-dollar Fortune 500, very well-known company that I will not name. And I just was really, I continued to work with her, but I made it very clear to her that this was not going to be resolved in a way that would be beneficial to her.
Yeah.
But just as digging in that a lot of us convince ourselves of for all these different reasons that we're going to stay in an environment that has made it very clear that it doesn't want us there, and that
Exactly.
is and that is very clearly discriminatory, hostile, and toxic. It just bothers me that so many of us have really bought into this idea that we should dig in and fight to stay somewhere rather than fighting to get out
And saving ourselves.
and
So
saving
I told
our
you,
health and our mental well-being. And it's counter to all of those things. And so I just the lady whispering in the parking lot really bothered me.
Yeah.
And so I really was getting off my chest my thoughts about it, and all the reasons that I know, that I hear from people about the reasons that they won't fight to leave, but they'll fight to stay. And I just wanted people to have a different perspective
Yeah.
about why it's better, really in your interest, to fight to leave
Yeah.
rather than fight to stay. And I know that I mean, I'm a single parent of an adult child now, but I was a single parent for a very long time, and I had to make decisions even in the context of being a single parent to leave jobs, right? And it was scary the first time, but wasn't scary any of the other times, because then I knew what to do. But
Yeah.
everybody, and I know it's scary, but
Yeah.
me, as Black people, we have to choose ourselves and love
Yeah.
ourselves. And we are in an environment that is getting more and more and more hostile to our presence. You know, the Supreme Court decision that just came down today. I mean, fascism is like right at the doorstep, right? And it's not going to make things easy for Black people in America in these circumstances. But we have literally been taught by society and our parents and families that we have to work, be the hardest worker, be the smartest, be the fastest, be the best, yet also make yourself smaller and smaller and smaller to fit into these spaces that are hostile to your presence and don't want you. And that
Exactly.
right for you to even have the right to sit at the table, at somebody else's table, who have never wanted you there.
Exactly.
And are now, you know, doing all the things that they can to pull the chair out from underneath the table. And we are still fighting and clawing to stay at this table. And I'm like, go build your own damn table and
Yes.
you want to it, and fight to get out of those jobs with the resources to do the things that you want to do if they're violating the law, you know, for as long as we still have workplace right laws, because I think that's the next big right around the corner, in my opinion. But I'm like, there are laws right now that protect your rights.
Yeah.
Some of it's in the place.
Yeah.
And instead of fighting to stay at the table that doesn't want you there, why not fight to make them pay you when they violate your rights, so that you can go build your own damn table, which is what I did, right? And so I really want us to understand that there are other options to this, but also that there's an unlearning that we have to actively engage in, to realize, not just, you know, to get at why we believe that we got to stay and fight and prove ourselves over and over and over again.
It's a losing game.
It
right?
is.
You're trying to prove something to people who will never, ever accept you.
Because they have been programmed to believe that they're better and that you're not supposed to be. And so when you come in and you are, they resent you for it, and they will do everything they can to make your life difficult because of the inadequacies that you are exposing in them. And there's nothing that you can do about that.
Yep.
Right? And making yourself smaller won't solve it either.
No.
So,
you can't problem solve your way out of it, because it doesn't make logical sense.
Racism is not rational. I tell people all the time, racism is not rational. And the energy that a lot of us spend trying to understand them and understand why they're doing what they're doing, we need to work on why we are staying and what we need to do to get out of these situations, instead of sitting down trying to do armchair psychology, trying to figure out the epigenetics of white supremacy. You know, you need to be about the business of trying to remove yourself from these situations.
Exactly.
It's harmful to us. People are dying. People are having heart attacks. People are having strokes. People are getting cancer. People are having psychological breakdowns. A lot. There's a lot of
we saw what happened with Dr. Antoinette Bailey. Yes.
She's not an isolated incident. She's just the one we know about.
Yes.
And really, really, I've had people tell me that they were suicidal because of their job. Right.
Wow.
So I really, really want us to understand that it's not the flex. Hanging in and clawing to be at a table that doesn't want you there it's not the flex. It really
Yes.
is not. And it's not in our interest, because people almost are proud to tell you how I'm going to stay, and I'm going to let them make me leave. And I'm like, for real?
For
Like,
real. Right.
and even in the comments, people talking about, I was there for 28 years and I got to retire. And I'm like, you stayed in an environment like that for 28 years.
Exactly.
And
Beat you
that's
down.
a good thing? That's
Yeah.
not a good thing. It's
Yes.
not.
Yes. And they also complain about all the physical and psychological symptoms they're experiencing. But yeah, it's like a badge of honor that I was able to stick it out. And Amarie, so many things I want to comment on what you said. Number one is, when we recognize these things are happening, know that this is a losing game. You will not win it all.
No.
And also knowing that you can exit, but it's scary at first. The first time you do it, it's scary.
Yes.
But the importance of getting your resources together, knowing your right, so you can pivot out, which is so important. Now, when I first contacted you about this, now everybody, you probably see Amarie on my channel a lot of times, okay? So, and we also did a masterclass together, which I'll put in description section, but the replay. But what I mentioned to you, and I want to mention to the audience, is that I was so disturbed about this because I had a call with a Black woman, and she said to me that the job was just stressing her out, and she was so unhappy, and she had been there for a long time. And she said, yeah, and I had a heart attack. And I thought she was joking because she was laughing. So I was like, maybe I misheard her. And I said, did you say you had a heart attack? And she said, yeah. And I went to work the next day. That wiped me out. Having that conversation with her, and I said, so what do you plan to do about the job? She said, well, I'm going to fight them because I'm not going to let them run me out. Those are the Black women who I'm very scared for. I'm very scared for, because they think one thing, but they put what they're trying to get from other people ahead of their own health and their well-being.
And you know what the sad thing about that is she could have another heart attack and drop dead, and she wouldn't get the pension, she wouldn't get the retirement, she wouldn't get any of it. And how is that worth it? You know what I mean? People are always talking to me about retirement, okay? And I'm like, I'm sorry, but you can roll over most of these retirement plans now.
So true.
And go take it somewhere else.
So true.
Right? And even if you can't, it's not worth it.
It's not.
Because if you have a stroke, or you drop dead, or you have a nervous breakdown, that money ain't gonna do you no good except to pay for your hospital or your burial bills.
Ooh,
it doesn't make, I don't understand the mindset, and it is a mindset that we have been taught as Black people, that
social programming
prove our worth to white folks. And I don't need to prove nothing to nobody.
Okay.
Right. And I'm grateful for the fact that I was taught that by my mother, especially, that you don't stay in a job that's mistreating you. My mother said that to me more than once when I was younger. And I know a lot of people were told just the opposite, that when you get that good job, you got to stay in there and hang in there. But my mother, may she rest in peace, told me very young. I remember being in a job. I was working in customer service. I was like maybe 19 or something. And they had this really horrible work environment, and they would be spying on people while they were doing the calls, and then calling you into the office and berating you. And people telling you, like, when you got in there, they would be telling you, oh, you could get fired if they call you in there. And this is all over. And it was for the Sun Sentinel of Fort Lauderdale. I don't mind saying where it was. And they were, I hope they don't have, I don't even know if they still exist, but I hope they don't have this still. But they were basically, I was working in the call center where people would call in about their newspaper. It was missing. They didn't get it. They wanted to change the script, but they made the work environment so stressful, right? And you're young. And when you're young, you don't know that people aren't supposed to talk to you and treat you this way. And a lot of the people who were the overseers in the back office were people that looked like me. So just the minute you sat down in there, people would start telling you about all the things you need to do so you didn't get fired, right? Wow. And so I remember getting called into there because of something on a phone call where I made a mistake, and I'm brand new, right? Saying something to someone, they called me in, and they're all standing around, and it was very stressful. And then I got home, and a couple of days later, I wasn't feeling well, and my mother was a nurse. And my mother was listening to me coughing, whatever. And she's like, where are you going? I'm going to work. And she's like, you're sick. Why are you going to work? And I'm like, I can't be, I'm on my probationary period. I can't be sick. And I got so upset that I went upstairs And I was like, if I call in sick, they'll fire me. I can't be sick. And my mother was like, what in the world are you talking about? You can't be sick.
Right.
Like, you live at home. You ain't got chick nor child. My mother's from the Caribbean. She's like, you ain't got chick nor child. You live at home. Quit that job. She's like, I want you to go quit that job.
Wow.
You
Wow.
need to go in bed. You're not going nowhere. If you call them and you quit. And I call and I quit.
Excellent.
And so and what she said to me over and over again was, don't work anywhere and let people disrespect you. And my mother dealt with a lot of disrespect. She was a nurse. She had a master's degree. She had people try to promote people over her, ask her to train people, all kinds. And she would tell us about it. And my mother would quit a job. My mother would quit a job. And so I learned that from my mom, that if people are working right, you quit and go do something else. Because if you have the qualifications, you can find another job.
Yeah.
My mother also exited the workplace in her 50s. So I learned a lot of stuff. Well, my mother had a good husband. So when you got a good husband, you could do that, right? Everybody can't do that either. But my mother was like, I quit. She would quit a job. And I learned that from her, that you won't let people disrespect you and mistreat you in a work environment. And I realized that other people don't get taught that, you get a good job and you're supposed to stay in there and fight. And let them do and keep your mouth shut and take the, whatever. So because there's some retirement at the end of the rainbow is a lot of what people keep talking to me about and all these things. But, what I learned is the opposite of that. So the first time I had to leave a job was very traumatic and very difficult because, I've told that story on my channel as well about how I ended up doing what I do because it was a Black woman that was doing it to me.
Right. I was going to say that, right? It's not just white people. It's anybody engaging in white supremacist behavior.
White supremacy can't work without us. We keep it alive. It cannot work without Black people and people of color. And they don't even need to do much anymore because we be doing it for them.
We took the baton and we're running with it.
Yeah, running as hard as we can, right? And that's part of us trying to prove our worth, right?
Yes.
And so it was very traumatizing. And I won't, I've told the story before. People can see it on my channel about how I became the anti-HR lady. But it was traumatizing primarily because it was a Black woman who was doing it. Yeah. But once I figured out how to cash out of that one, after that, I was like, you act crazy with me, I'm out. I remember being at a job in 6 weeks. I was like, this woman is the handmaiden of the devil, and I'm not staying here.
Yes.
I started looking for another job, and I remember telling my dad, and my dad was like, but you just got there. Crazy.
It don't matter. It don't matter.
I was like, she is not right. And it wasn't even what she did to me. It was how I observed her treating other people in the office, and that she was
good.
And I was like, oh no, because I was like, eventually she's gonna come around to me, and I'm not
going to you. Yes,
one. And she did, and I had to check her. Right. But I was like, I knew my value. I knew what I knew. Yeah. I knew what the value was that I was bringing, and I was like, I got to take this somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because I'm not staying in this environment. And so literally I took that job in October, and I put in my resignation in December before Christmas and had a new job to start in February. It took me a little break, went to Trinidad for Carnival, jumped up a little bit, came back and went to my new job. I was like, oh no.
Yes, because that's an example of you not only knowing your worth, but you have family around you telling you and supporting you, right? Unfortunately, a lot of the Black women that I've been working with
don't have it.
Oh my gosh, their family is on them. Like, how dare you think of leaving that job? That's a good job.
Especially when they have big paying jobs and good jobs, because and all of these, people hear me say all the time, all roads lead to white supremacy, in my opinion. That's the etymology of everything, because we have to fight so hard to get these jobs, and sometimes we're the first. We're the only with the big corporate Fortune 500 job. We're the only with the bigger job in the family, right? And so people are like relying on you to have that job. That's an added pressure.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, I want Black women listening to me here and anywhere to understand that you deserve to put yourself first.
Yes.
If nobody ever told you that before, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
You deserve to put yourself first, right? Because if you drop dead, your family still ain't gonna have none of that. Right. And at the end of the day, you deserve to live a life of happiness and joy. Your job is not supposed to be an endurance test.
It's also your life.
I tell
It's
that,
your
say that
life.
about personal relationships, and I say it about professional relationships as well. Marriage is not supposed to be an endurance test. Your job is not supposed to be an endurance test. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're going in there every day and you feeling you just in there enduring until you can get your retirement or until you can anything, then you
Mm-mm.
need to be thinking about doing something else. There are
Exactly.
other jobs. You are not a tree. You can move. You can move to another state. You can move to another country. Hello, you can move. You do not have to stay in these environments. And the work
Yeah.
begins with you. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what your family says. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. It is
Mm-hmm.
about what you believe
Mm-hmm.
about your own self and about what
Yeah.
your own value is. And it does require therapy with somebody like Dr. Kimani, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
do that, people. I just want to say. But you have to unlearn this stuff because we've been
Yeah.
taught it over generations. Just like people have
Absolutely.
been taught to believe that they are inherently better
Mm-hmm.
and that their empathy has been stripped away from them.
Mm-hmm.
And I deeply believe that. We
Mm-hmm.
have been taught also that we are to be servants, that we are
Yeah.
here to be in service to capitalism and in service to white people. And we
Mm-hmm.
have to unlearn all of that.
Mm-hmm.
We have to
Mm-hmm.
unlearn it. We have to
Mm-hmm.
unteach that.
Yes.
Intentionally recognize it and then intentionally unlearn it. So when
Yeah.
you have to unpack, like, why do you feel you got to be the last one in the office? Why do you feel it's okay for these people to call you on a Saturday morning? What is it that you're trying to prove?
Why are you overworking? Why has your job become your whole life that you
Yes.
spend so much time thinking about doing things for the job? You don't have a life anymore. So your whole identity is tied up to your job. You can't even think of another way.
And at the root of it is our desire for acceptance and value in this society, because we realize as Black people, and you've heard me say this before,
Mm-hmm.
we know, even we may never say it out loud, but we know that we are second-class citizens in the United States of America. We know.
Mm-hmm.
And that you cannot educate yourself way out of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a house big enough that you can buy.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a car nice enough that you can drive.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that this society was not created for you or your success. And while some of us may find a way to succeed in the game wasn't created for us. And every time we figure out the rules, they change it.
Exactly.
So we understand that inherently.
Yeah.
But a lot of it are constantly trying to prove, maybe if I act better, they won't treat me like a nigga.
Maybe if I get another degree, maybe if I get more certification.
If I do that thing, I won't be one anymore.
And in fact, you might be more of a target.
It's not going to make a difference for them. And so you stop worrying about them and start worrying about, what do you believe about you? What do you know about you? Right?
Yes.
And treat yourself better. If you truly love and respect yourself, you cannot stay in an environment that is disrespecting and abusing you and discriminating against you. You wouldn't be able to do it. Like, I literally couldn't do it. And literally was like, I can't go back into another plantation. I can't do it because my value would not allow me to do it. So I was like, I got to figure out another way. After my last job, I was like, I got to figure out another way, because I can't get on another plantation. I can't.
Right. And you talk a lot about this. I talk a lot about this, about how many of these jobs really mirror plantations. And because of that, we've had this plantation mentality. But what you're saying is we have to get off the plantation and recognize we have freedoms, we have rights, and we have skills that we can take somewhere else. So if you got that job, what makes you think you can't get a job somewhere else, right? Or create your own thing. But that's that mentality. But you said something during that viral video. You talked about how a lot of times, not only the social programming that came from enslavement. Can you please share what you shared on that video about how, as Black people, sometimes we view ourselves in terms of our labor? Can you speak on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of us set our value based on how hard we can work. And we don't see ourselves as deserving leisure, right? We see ourselves, our value, and how much we can work. Like how hard we can work and how much work we can do, right? And it all goes back to the same thing of wanting acceptance in a system that wasn't built for you. But you want to show that maybe if you work a little bit harder, they'll treat you better. You'll get the promotion, you'll get the this, you'll get the that. And so you keep working harder and harder and harder, and it still doesn't accomplish
No.
Is that
It's a never ending.
and it won't, and it's a never ending vicious cycle, right?
Yes.
Until you crash or you come to a realization, one of those two
Yes.
things. But we have been programmed that we work hard, we got to be the best, you got to be the brightest, because you're not going to even get the job. You get the interview, but you won't get the job if you're not the best and the brightest, right?
Exactly.
Um,
While others are mediocre at best.
yes. And and so you think you got to go in there and you got to work, and it still ends up backfiring on you.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're the best, white folks don't like it when you're better than them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Especially at work. Nowhere, but especially at work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you come in, and even though they may hire you because of all your knowledge, skills, and ability, then they resent you for it and seek to punish you for it and put you in.
That's a threat.
Because
That's a threat. Yeah.
Right. And so what I was saying is, you can't work your way out of this stuff.
No,
There's nothing you can do, because you are inside of a system and you're operating inside of a system. And some of us don't want to recognize it. I think most Black people kind of do. White people like to pretend that it doesn't exist while they continue to benefit from it. But you're inside of a system that was created, right, to operate the way that it's operating. The system is not broken, and it's operating exactly as it was designed. And so you're sitting there thinking that you can work your way out of this, and you can't.
No.
You have to remove yourself from these things. And as a Black community, our dollar does not circulate in our community. It goes right out the door, because we spend so much energy, again, trying to buy our way into this system instead of supporting ourselves, supporting our own, right? And we have to get out of that.
Absolutely.
And people ask me, well, what does that mean? That we need to go create our own businesses? Yeah, we do, because our community needs us to have we need to have our own grocery stores. We need to have our own everything. Right?
And support one another, right? Not only financially, economically, but also in the workplace. So you talked about all skin folk and kinfolk. So even the Black people, some of them who get in these positions, become threatened by another Black person, another Black woman, because that enslaved white supremacist mentality.
But they need to be the only one. They need to be the only
one. I got to be the best. I got to distinguish you. Yeah.
But they need to be the only one. And so they have, but also it is because it is communicated, usually not explicitly, passively, that is what is expected of you.
Yeah.
You come in and you be the good, you need to be the good house, you know what? And like what was his name in Django?
Was it Steven? Was it Steven?
Steven. And you come in and you be a good Steven, right? Yes. And you love massa more than you love yourself, right? And you there to watch all the other slaves and make sure they don't get out of line, right?
Exactly.
And the minute that you don't do that, you will be questioned.
Yeah.
Right. The minute you come in there, like I used to do, my thing was like, if I'm the only one when I get there, I ain't gonna be the only Black person when I leave.
Yes.
And you would be surprised at how many times I would get called in and asked questions about who I was hiring, because they think it's normal for everybody to hire them.
Right.
But when they start seeing a critical mass of people of color coming through the door, right? But my thing was, I'm not here to do anything else. I believe when you have power, it's your responsibility to wield it.
Agreed.
And to wield it to the benefit of everyone, especially those who are usually overlooked and marginalized. So my thing was, if I have power, then I have to use the power that I have for as long as I can use it, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of us are more intent on just keeping our place.
Yeah.
And
or stepping on other people. Benefit, right?
But it's mainly keeping our place is what I have found a lot of it is, and that it is passively messaged that is what you're expected to do. And a lot of times you are put over as the overseer, sort of, to be the person that is mistreating people while they get it to sit in the office and act like they don't know what's going on. I've literally seen this. I remember working in a job when I was young at a hospital that I won't name, but it was at a hospital, a major hospital in Washington, D.C. And there was a Black woman who was over the billing for the doctors, right? And the entire staff was Black under her. I was working for her boss, who was a white woman. And I remember the first week that I came into my job, my boss at the time was the white woman's executive assistant. So I was like her assistant. And she was a wonderful woman. And she called me in and she told me, kind of laid out for me that this, she wanted me to go to the meetings that this woman had with her staff, with her accounting staff. And
Mhm.
she was trying to prepare me for what I was going to see and hear. And basically, she found the way that this woman treated her staff so abusive, and this is a white woman, that she didn't want to have to go to the meetings anymore. So she wanted me to go. So she made me go, and
Oh
she
gosh.
take notes, and she told me, don't worry about any, what she does or says, because you don't work for her. Basically, she can't fire you. She can. And I went into that first meeting, and that woman was so abusive in her language,
Wow.
the way that she talked to those people that worked for her, who were all Black people.
Wow.
She's a Black woman, and she was
Yes.
so abusive that I was in shock, because I had never seen. I'm like 20 something years old. I'd never
Mm.
seen. And I went into the woman, and I was almost in tears. And she was like, she was telling me she was really sorry. She did not. She had complained to her boss about it
Mhm.
many times,
Mhm.
but the woman was bringing in the money. She was getting
Wow.
that money. She was
And
doing that. She was getting
remember I
that.
asked you that question before about how bullies are able to stay, and you said
And
they're
so
bringing
this,
money.
her boss, the white woman, didn't care as long as that money got collected.
Yep.
She
Like
was
a
willing
slave,
to
a plantation.
overlook
Yep.
how this woman was treating these people, because none of them looked like her. It
Exactly.
was okay. She
This
never
you're
hired any white people in
dehumanized.
that billing department. Everybody was Black, and she
Wow.
was horrible. And I quit that job. I didn't stay because my boss ended up leaving. And
Mm.
after she left, it turned into a very toxic work environment
Mhm.
with her predecessor and the person who replaced her. And that was the only job I ever had where I literally wrote a resignation letter and left it on somebody's desk and never came back.
Woo. Wow.
Um, because again, what did my mama teach me? So I was like, yeah, I'm not coming back. And I'm
Yeah.
not even giving them 2 weeks. I'm just not
Yeah.
coming back.
Ah.
Because it just got to be toxic all the way around. And this woman
Yeah.
would sit in her office and just pretend. You could hear this woman yelling at people down at the other end of the hall. Like, the white woman's office was on one end and her office was on the other end. And the billing team was sitting outside, like they're in a suite outside, a hall outside of her office. And you could literally hear her yelling at them.
Oh my
This woman would be
gosh.
sitting in her office.
Ah.
She would be sitting in her office. And I learned, the opinions and the things that I say from experience and from my
Mhm.
observations of being in work environments for 30 plus years.
Mhm.
And she sat in her office and she never said anything. She never did
So
anything.
she was complicit with the abuse.
Complicit. And you would hear this woman yelling and screaming at people. And it was all Black people she was doing this to.
Wow.
So I learned early on that Black people could be just as horrible,
Yeah.
right? But she was still doing at the behest of the system and this white woman who
Yeah.
got to pretend to be the good guy.
Mhm.
Because she wasn't
Mhm.
actually doing, but she was allowing it to be done, right?
Exactly.
She was allowing
Exactly.
it to be done. And I left that job, and I found out later that when someone else replaced that woman,
Mhm.
white woman,
Mhm.
that's when that woman got rid of, because the person who came was not willing
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
allow the toxicity to continue, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so she got fired. The same one who was up there firing people left and right and verbally abusing and whatever, she got fired. But the lesson in that to me was that people will stand by and watch stuff happen and then say that they can't do
Exactly.
anything because they didn't
They'll be
participate.
complicit
And
because
they
the
will use
system is
people that look
toxic.
like us. They will use people that look like us. But at the end
Yep.
of the day, this woman was getting bonuses for how quickly she was bringing in the money and all these different things. But she was basically abusing people and terrorizing
Exactly.
people
Exactly.
in order to be able to get those results.
Yeah.
Not just her supervisor, but for the hospital and for the system that she was working for, right?
Mm.
She was
Mm.
doing the billing for the doctors. The doctors had
Mm.
their own billing system that was separate from the hospital, and she was doing the billing. So the doctors loved her because they was getting their money, right?
Wow.
And no one was concerned about the work environment that she was creating for the people who was actually billing and
Doing the
collecting,
work. Yeah.
right? And so I just learned early on that even when I see Black people behaving in ways that are problematic, I understand that all roads lead to white supremacy. And that's
True.
not making an excuse for the behavior. That's
Yeah.
understanding where all this stuff comes from,
True. True.
right?
It
Because
reminds me of what Stephanie talks about, fruit of the slavery tree and internalized racism for this
yep,
Black woman. What's
mhm,
so interesting, several things. One is when you think about internalized oppression, you think about those Black people who might try to ingratiate, do all these other things to get position. Somebody said they're like pick me's, right? Pick me, pick me, pick me. But
mhm,
just like you said, it comes back to them too.
It sure
They're not
does.
saved from it. And the fact that this woman knew that this woman is terrorizing people, the irony, you all working in a hospital where you're supposed to be healing people, she terrorizing and harming people, but it ties into the system is toxic. It's not just that
The
Black
system
woman.
is toxic.
The
It's not
whole
just one
system.
person. The whole system is toxic. And I found, I've said before that some of the worst work environments for employees, and especially for Black women, are these nonprofits and hospitals and these kinds of systems. I'm
You
getting
said
ready.
the education system
Get ready
too.
to do my 2024 version of the worst places for Black people, women to work. And
You
last
gotta
year,
add, you gotta add schools. You gotta add school districts
oh
too.
no, the
You
schools
gotta
were
add
on the top are on the list.
them.
Last year was the very number one was nonprofits, right? But there I had about 10 types of employers that I said were the worst. And I think that hospital systems and nonprofits are right up there. And so a lot of hospitals are nonprofits, right? And so and people go into these environments thinking they're safe, and they're not, right?
No.
A lot of these institutions are women-led, white women-led, Black women-led, and it's still because you're operating in a system that expects you to behave in a particular way. And what I will say is, when you, as a Black person especially, but any person, wants to say that this is not right, the system will turn on you quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Like that, boom. It don't matter how fabulous you are as an employee. It doesn't matter.
It will
Boom.
turn on you fast. I've had clients that were white. I've had clients that were Asian, and many clients that are Black. And all of them have learned that when they raised their hand and said, this is not right, even when they were saying, I'm observing this happening to other people and this is not right, the system turned full throttle on you.
They were circling the wagons around you.
It is designed to operate in a certain way, and it is going to ensure that the system is designed to ensure that a certain group of people remain at the top and a certain group of people remain at the bottom. And that is how it will penalize you if you try to say that that's not the way that it should function.
Exactly.
And so that is why when I see Black people functioning in these ways, it's not an excuse and it's not okay. And ultimately, it always comes back to bite them, right?
It does.
It always does. It always does. I've seen Black people be, the number one, slave master, and then get thrown under the bus when people got together and complained about the hostile work environment. They're the ones that got thrown under the bus.
Exactly.
They were doing it at the behest of the other person in the office above them. Right? That person gets to keep their hands clean.
Right.
It's not you over there doing all their dirty work for them.
Right. Right.
And so I think that it's really important for us to realize whether we are being the tools or whether we are being the people who are at the receiving end of this stuff, where it is all coming from. Doesn't mean you shouldn't document, doesn't mean that you shouldn't report, doesn't mean you shouldn't leave, but you just need to understand that it's still being done to keep a certain system in place.
Exactly. So we talked about some of the roots in terms of enslavement, social programming, white supremacy, all of that. Now, you also said something about the economic climate, how some Black women might say, oh, I'm a fight because, can you speak a little bit about that too?
Well, we can't underestimate the fact that, a lot of the reasons people are afraid to leave is because the system keeps telling them that there's a scarcity in jobs, which isn't true. All of these things are manufactured, in my personal opinion. That when they wanted to have, after COVID, they needed rich, wealthy people needed to make back the money they lost. So all of a sudden we had inflation, right? Then when people are really feeling it now and are not spending money, now they got to lower interest rates and say, oh, look, inflation's gone, right? All of this stuff is manufactured. Otherwise, they couldn't turn it off and on the way that they do.
Yeah.
They convince you, people refusing to come to work after COVID, coming to the office. They're working, but they refuse to come into the office after COVID, because if you could run your businesses for 2 whole years with people working from home, then why do you need everybody to come back to the office? Because the capitalism monster has to be fed. And so what they start doing, laying people off so that they could scare you into thinking you're not going to have a job and making you come back to work in the office. So people are willing to do whatever they're told to do because they're afraid that they're going to lose their jobs. And so that is another way that you beat people into submission and into doing whatever you want. And that's how capitalism functions. And so people are afraid to leave these jobs because they're afraid, they believe what they're told, that they can find another job. I hear people say, "Oh, well, what if I do that, then I can't use my job as a reference." I'm like, you get to decide who you put down as a reference for a job.
Mm-hmm.
Most jobs, as someone I was talking to just the other day asking for my advice, most jobs have a very clear policy that they don't give references.
Mm-hmm.
They confirm your employment, whether you work there or not, is all they
Mm-hmm.
will do because they're afraid of being accused of defamation. Most
Awesome.
corporate entities, that's how they function. They will
Okay. Can you repeat that again, Amarie, about that?
most jobs will, when you leave a job,
Mm-hmm.
they will confirm that you work there and your dates of employment when someone calls.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they do not want to be accused of defaming someone.
Okay.
Now, if you name an individual, now if an application says they want a reference, you can put anybody down you want. I just,
That's
when
good advice.
you people use as a reason why they can't leave, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but
That's
if
good
you want
advice.
to leave, you're not staying because of a reference.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
telling me that's why you're staying, but that's not why you're staying.
Right. It's an excuse. It's an excuse.
It's an
So I'm
excuse.
glad you said that, because so many Black women say,
Oh,
well, I want to leave, but what will the old job say about me? So you just clear that up, right? You just
the old job is going to say that you worked there and what your dates of employment were. And if
mm-hmm.
you are leaving because they're discriminating against you and you have a
Mm-hmm.
negotiated separation with severance, you can actually explicitly put in there what they're allowed to say about you. I've done it more than once. I've helped other clients do it, right? So it's these reasons that people make up are reasons they make up because they don't want to do anything. And it's much
Yeah.
easier to make excuses than to act,
So
right?
true.
And so if you want to leave, I have rarely used a former supervisor as a reference. Rarely. Even when they would have given me a good reference, I used people that I felt were better references. You get to decide who your reference is. It doesn't have to
Exactly.
be the supervisor. And let me tell you something else.
Hmm.
I have been asked before why I was leaving a job. When I left the handmaiden of the devil's job, and I love to call her that because that's what she was. I told them in the interview, and these people hired me after I told them that. I told them that I left because I was working in an environment that was toxic,
Mm.
and I did not want to be complicit in it because I was
Mm.
overseeing HR and other things, and I did not come there with the intention of helping to create and keep in place an environment that was harmful to employees, and therefore I was not willing to stay there. And they
Wow.
hired me because I said
Wow.
that. Because
Yes.
I said that.
Yes.
So it's okay to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to be truthful and authentic a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times. And if they wouldn't hire you, you don't need to be working there.
Exactly. That's a bad sign, right? We
You
talk
don't need
about
to be
red
working there.
flags.
So when they
Yes.
asked me like explicitly, because I had only been at that job for 3 months and I left. So I expected to be asked. And I was honest
Yes. Yes.
about why I was leaving.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And the job that wanted to hire me hired me.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And
So
so I don't want people need to understand that these are all reasons. You can either give yourself a reason to stay or you can give yourself a reason to leave.
that's
And I
true.
suggest you give yourself a reason to leave. But all these
Yes.
things about retirement plans and references, those are just red herrings for people that don't
And
want to
insurance, I can't
leave.
get another job, all those things. We covered all those things in the summit, right?
Yeah.
So all the things that we say, the lies that we say to ourselves, excuses, we're like, let's address that in the summit. Let's just nip that in the butt. Now, something that you said too that reminded me of the plantation mentality. When people try to put that fear onto us about, oh my God, there's no jobs, there's no this, right? It's almost like if you run away from the plantation, you're going to be found, you're going to be punished. All these other things are
That's where
happening.
it all comes from.
Exactly.
It all comes
Exactly.
from. I'm on the plantation. How dare you free yourself and leave me here on the plantation?
That part too.
Because and I have lived outside the United States for 3 years.
Mhm.
And I remember when I was leaving and people had lots to say, but you know what? None of what they had to say was any of my business. So I didn't make it my business. I just went about and did what I needed to do to
Yes.
live the life that I wanted for myself. And I
Mhm.
think we need to concentrate less on what other people's opinions of our lives are and
Mhm.
on more on what our opinion is.
Yeah. And
Right?
surround yourself and share things with people who can pour into you and not project their fears onto you. So if everybody you talking to in your circle and they're like, girl, you better stay at that good job, don't tell them your business.
And the other thing is you always got to be watching your circle. And
True.
you have to be very careful about who
So
you
true.
tell your hopes and dreams to.
So true.
You have
No coworkers, please. Don't tell your coworkers.
about,
Do
or some
not.
members of your family either.
That's
Definitely don't
true.
tell your coworkers, but be careful about who you telling your family, because everybody in your family don't wish you well either, because it's the same "you stay on the plantation with me" mentality
Ooh,
happens in your
yeah.
family as well. And
Yeah.
people don't need to understand your choices. You
Mhm.
do. People don't need to understand why I decided to move. That's for me to understand.
It's your life.
It's my life,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I will say one more thing about this retirement thing, because
Mhm.
as you know, I also have a travel business, and I travel a
Mhm.
lot all
Mhm.
around the world. It's the thing that
Mhm.
makes me happiest in this world.
Mhm.
And I remember being in Croatia, in Dubrovnik, which has a lot of steps and hills and stairs and climbing. And
Mhm.
I remember watching this couple that were in their 70s. They looked at least 70s, struggling
Mhm.
to go up and down those steps. And I remember thinking to myself, boy, am I glad I'm here now,
Mhm.
that I'm
Mhm.
doing this now. Because I don't
Mhm.
know if when I'm in 20, 25 years, whether or not I'm going to be able to, go up and down here like this. And so
Mhm.
I always tell people the time to live your best life is now. It is
Exactly.
waiting for 75 and 80. You might not even
Mhm.
make it to 75 and 80.
Mhm.
The time to
Mhm.
figure out how to live your best life is now, whatever that
Yeah.
looks like for you.
Yeah.
And no one else has to understand it but you.
And you don't need to
No
convince
one
anybody else.
have to
You don't
explain
need
it
to,
to
yeah.
anybody else. You have to understand it. Nobody else has to understand it. So
Yeah.
it's really important for us to stop worrying about other people's opinion. It's really don't
Mhm.
make it your business. It's none of your business. Other people's opinion about you is none of your business.
Right. And check
How
your
I live
circle.
my life. Other people's opinions is none of my business. I don't want to hear
Yes.
it. I don't want nobody else to tell me about it, because I don't care. I really
Exactly.
don't care. And so
Exactly.
you have to learn to live a life of intention, and a
Mhm.
life where you are creating the life that you want for yourself, and
Mhm.
strategizing how to get there if you're not there yet. And
Mhm.
everything that you do should be in service to that, and not
Mhm.
in service to what other people's opinions are,
So
and what
true.
other people's are.
And don't put so much weight on other people's opinions, and not only check your
Put any weight
circle.
on other people's opinions, honestly.
Right.
Don't put,
Right.
people have a right to their opinion,
Yeah.
right? You have a right to not care about what their opinion is.
So true. And what I think many of us do, unfortunately, is that we seek people out for opinions, their advice. But if you look at their life, they're not living a good life, right? So Glenn Mazzini, I love her quote. She said, check the tree before you pick the fruit.
Mhm,
So if the fruit is rotten, they're having a horrible, miserable life.
mhm.
Why are you
Right.
going to them for
You
advice?
go out and find people who are doing what you want to do. And I was very lucky to have a coach who was, an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
My best friend was an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew what that looked like.
Yeah.
And and I knew it was something that was attainable. And so I think that, more of us need to be what you go and look at people who are living the life that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who you might want to advice from, but not from
Yes.
people who ain't doing nothing. What are you
No.
asking them for? They
No.
don't know. They don't
No.
know.
No, they don't know.
Asking
And they
them.
will try to hold you back. Like you said, they
Yeah.
want you to stay on the plantation.
Because
So
that's all they know. And
that's all
most
they
of us,
know.
we have
They can't
only
see
ever
anything
known,
else.
we're raised and we're taught you go to college, put
Mm-hmm.
yourself in a whole bunch of debt, because most of us can't pay for college.
Mm-hmm.
And then you are a slave to this system, right? Where you're on the corporate plantation
Mm-hmm.
till you're 65, 75 years old. And then maybe if you last long, you can get your pension and go see something. And I'm like,
Mm,
that's not the way to live life. That is
that's
not
not,
the way
no,
to live
no,
life. That's
no.
what we're all Americans, especially, are programmed that that's the way it's supposed to work. You go buy what
Exactly.
you can't afford, go buy a house, go buy cars, go buy this, go buy that, right? And you become a slave to this system that you can't get out of,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
then you work for 50, 60 years. And then
Right.
maybe you'll live long. You'll live long enough to exit the system. And
Yeah.
a lot of people, with the economy being the way it is, can't even afford to put no money aside for retirement. So it's
True.
like, what are you holding on to this job for that you can't even get a pension? And when you do get a retirement, they have that you got to wait 5 years to be vested, which is just another way of enslavement. So there's
Exactly.
all kinds of ways that the system operates to
Mm-hmm.
try to keep you on the plantation.
Yes.
So you
Yes.
have to be first recognizing that you're operating in a system, and then
Mm-hmm.
coming up with a strategy for how you're going to get yourself out of it. But
Yeah.
stay and fight thing, is not the way. It's
No,
not.
and be aware of the traps of that you have to get certain things, you have to buy certain things to be worthy, right? So in addition to the job defining your identity and your worth, the car, the house,
All of
so
it.
now you're in debt, and then you feel even more stuck to the job. So we have to be very careful of that external validation. So Amarie, I've heard so many sad stories from Black women talking about like the job is just their worst nightmare. So because of the job, they're living their worst nightmare. So I've heard about depression, anxiety, trauma symptoms, nightmares, heart attacks, strokes,
Heart
so many things.
palpitations, my eye used to twitch. My eyes used to uncurl. I used to have a twitch that would happen uncontrollably. And it didn't happen when I was at work. It only happened when I was at rest.
That's stress.
And it was stress. And
Yeah.
I used to have chest pains. My hair was falling out. All of these things were happening to me. And I couldn't figure it out. I remember having the chest pains and going to the emergency room and then going to my doctor, and and the person in the hospital telling me that it was an anxiety attack.
Wow.
I thought I was having a heart attack, right?
Wow.
And so these things manifest all kinds of ways, right? And people are dying because of it, right? And it just doesn't serve us to fight to stay in these kinds of environments. I don't care how much money they're paying you, and I was being paid a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. So Amarie,
it's not worth it.
It's not. And because both of us are toxic job survivors, we've talked about how we've been impacted physically and psychologically. What about the Black women that you have discovery calls with? What are some of the things that they're saying to you about their physical and or psychological symptoms as a result of the job?
Well, it's all the things you mentioned. People are having chest pains. People are having their hair falling out is a big one. People have rashes. Right? Their skin is breaking out, and they've never had any family history of any of these things, right? People are deeply depressed, right? Have serious anxiety attacks when it's on Sundays.
Oh, the Sunday dread. Yeah.
Sunday is a hard day for a lot of people.
Woo, yes.
Sundays are a hard day. Sunday is one of my favorite days of the week now, but it didn't used to be, right?
Exactly.
And so those are the kinds of, all of these things they're very common.
Yeah.
A lot of people going on short-term disability to get out of these, but I'm like, but they don't have no plan for when it's time to go back. And one of the things I help my clients with is coming up with a plan that allows them to go on disability and then never have to go back.
Yes, exit plan.
Because it's like you can use the disability time to execute your strategy, so you don't have to go back. But what's going on disability is not a strategy, right? And so a lot of people are going out on short-term disability because of the stress. They're going on a family medical leave per their doctor because of the stress, which results in them being on short-term disability, right? And so there's a lot of that happening. A lot of that happening that I talk to, but there's so much mental harm that is coming to people. Not all, a lot of it is, some of it is manifesting physically, because eventually what's happening up here affects everything else.
Oh, absolutely.
But a lot of it starts with a lot of depression, like deeply depressed. I spoke to this man last week and I could see the depression in him because he was in so much shock. Because that's what happens, especially if you've never experienced before. It's deeply, deeply mentally disturbing.
It's traumatizing.
You're questioning yourself, you're questioning your performance, you're questioning your ability. And a lot of what I have to tell people is this doesn't have anything to do with you, and you're not doing anything wrong.
No, and stop trying to spend so much time trying to figure it out.
Like trying to figure out like why.
You'll never figure it out.
What do I do? And I'm like, you didn't do anything.
No.
It's this person that has a problem. And it's not you. And racism is not rational. And you can't rationalize this because it's not rational.
No, exactly. And Amarie, you talked about the physical and psychological, how they go together. Like eventually one thing is going to be impacted by the other. Can you please speak to the impact of being in a toxic job can have on your relationships? So your friendships, your family relationships, romantic relationships, how does it spill over? So we're not just affected, it impacts other people around us as well.
It affects everything. It affects your ability to interact with your kids. It affects your ability, because you'll come home and you won't want to interact with your family.
You're drained.
You're so stressed. You're like, even on the weekend, you're thinking about it because Saturday is the one day, and then you start thinking about it on Sunday that you got to go
Right.
back on Monday, and it affects all of your personal relationships, and you're
Yeah.
constantly talking about the job. Even
Ooh,
when you're not there, you're talking about it and thinking about it.
everybody knows the people at your job.
I had someone on a trip with me recently, and she's up there answering email, and I was like, "Why are you answering people's email? Like, why?" Right? But because, and a big thing is that we have been taught as Black people not to have boundaries. And one of
Yeah,
the things I try to help with my clients is you have to establish boundaries. I have
true.
very strong boundaries, right? And I don't play about them, right?
Mhm.
And I'm
Mhm.
like, you have to have boundaries about what you will and will not accept,
Mhm.
right? Because you
Mhm.
teach people how to treat you in every single
Mhm.
interaction you have with them. And
Yeah.
so a lot of us are so busy trying to prove our worth, right? So we teach people to take advantage of us and to disrespect us and to expect us to answer emails at 11 o'clock at night and all these different things because we don't have any boundaries.
Right.
I always tell in my first interaction with people who has any boundaries and who doesn't, because
Mhm.
they'll come into my email and send me all these things and expect me to answer right away because they think, because they ain't got no boundaries, I don't, but I do. Right. Um, and they've been taught that because that's how people interact with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you have to learn, you first have to have boundaries. And when you have boundaries, you have the ability to respect other people's boundaries.
Mhm.
Because you
Mhm.
have
And when
boundaries.
you have boundaries, you know, not only when people are crossing your boundaries, but you are worthy. You know your worth. So you're like, wait a minute, wait. You're talking to me like this. You're treating me like this. Like this is not the place for me.
Exactly.
So, Amarie, can you speak? Because I love what you said also in that video about saying you're not going to leave, it's not the flex you think, because you talked about what the job is doing, right? So you talked
Mhm.
about that you're being set up in a lot of different ways and you may not even know. You're trying to fight them, but they plotting against you.
You're
Can you
digging in. Yeah, so people need to understand that, you know, human resources exist to protect the company first and
Mhm.
foremost.
Mhm.
And when you're staying and digging in and fighting, if this
Mhm.
job doesn't want you there, they're going to find a way to get rid of you.
True.
And so the minute you go to human resources and you complain about anything, you don't
Yeah.
even have to say the discrimination, the magic discrimination word. You complain about anything, you become the problem 9 times out of 10. And
Mhm.
so if after that you decide, well, I'm just going to stay and they're not going to get rid of me. Yes, they will. It's just a matter of time. And so
Mhm.
your time is better spent strategizing on how to leave on your own terms
True.
than sitting up in there waiting to see what they're going to do,
Right.
especially if you don't have no strategy around. If your whole strategy is digging in, that's not a strategy.
That's not a
If
strategy.
you're
And
staying,
and tipping them off that you're gonna call them out. Without
exactly.
a-
If you're staying to collect more documentation, if you're staying to, to build the case that you need to build to present to either them or to an attorney, that's one
Mhm.
thing. But if you're just, I'm going to spite them and I'm staying and and you're going to love me, as the song says, oh no,
Oh,
no, no, because they don't love you and they will find a way to get rid of you.
exactly.
You're sitting there digging in, they're back in the office with your manager and HR, figuring out how to get you on a PIP and get your
Mhm.
butt out of there. They
Exactly.
will, right?
Exactly.
I'm so tired of people coming to me after they're already on a PIP. Yes, I can help some of them, but some of them I can't do anything for you by then. And so I'm
Oh.
like, when you recognize the discrimination is happening, you need to document it and then
Yeah.
you need to get advice about how to deal with it. Do not
Mhm.
wait until you get put on a PIP
Mhm.
to say something,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
They're not, when they put you on a PIP, that you halfway out the door by then.
Ooh.
All
Ooh.
right. And
Ooh.
so just digging in to wait and see what's going to happen, you're just giving them more time to figure out how to get rid of you or to
Yeah.
continue to use you, right? Because if you're just taking it, right, and you haven't complained and you're just taking it, then they're just going to pile on and on and on until you can't take it, until you break. Right?
Exactly. So that's the part. That's the part I want Black women to hear too. So they're plotting against you with the pit, right? But the other thing is they will make it so miserable for you. So these people who work in like education, as I worked in education, right? You might be working these jobs and they'll say, oh, this is a stable job. It's not stable.
Mhm.
It's not stable because they can make it so miserable for you that you're going to end up leaving. They're going to push you out. They may not fire you, but
But
they'll
they're
end
going
up
to,
pushing
and
you.
that's their favorite thing to do. managers in cahoots with HR, is to just create a more and more difficult environment, because the reality is they can give you as much work as they want. Right. And you can complain about it. They can just add it to your job description. They can rewrite your whole job description. There's so many things that they can do. Right. And, I was just talking to someone today and they were complaining about their job being reclassified. And I'm like, they can do that.
I was just about to say that. I was literally just about to say that, because that happens.
They're allowed to do that. And unless you can show that they didn't do it, they're doing it for discriminatory reasons, which is very difficult. They can reclassify your job and add all these things to your job, and you can leave. And that's what they want you to do.
That's what they want. Yeah.
If you can show that they're doing that to you and they're not doing it to anybody else, then you may be able to make a claim for discrimination. But smart employers know they could just reclassify everybody's job. Right. And let me tell you, employers, I'm telling you, I've worked in HR I've seen HR undertake layoffs to get rid of one person. I've seen HR reclassify jobs just to get rid of one person.
Wow.
Don't think they don't do it. They do. Wow. I just told someone today, you need to act soon, because if they're doing layoffs, they're likely to put you in there because you accuse them of discrimination. They'll put you in there and say they just laid you off for business reasons.
Wow.
So people have to be careful about going to HR and raising these issues if they don't have a strategy.
Yeah.
Because all you're doing is making a target out of yourself. And if they really want you gone, they will create the environment to get you to go, they will get rid of you. You will still be suffering in there, and you will still lose your job, but it just won't be on your terms. And so that's what I'm like, if you're going to fight to leave on your own terms.
And fight for yourself.
And fight for yourself. Don't fight to stay in there to prove anything, to just prove that you could stay. But seriously.
Well, ultimately, you're going to lose, right?
Because you're ultimately you're playing a losing game. You're playing it's their business. It's their company. If they don't want you there, they will find a way to remove you from there.
Exactly.
And every bad thing an employer does is not discriminatory. They can do a lot of bad things and make people's lives very difficult just by bullying people and harassing people. And if you can't show that you are specifically being targeted, then you can't really complain and say it's discrimination. It's very key that people understand what discrimination is and what it's not. Everything is not discrimination. Some things are just hostile, bad work environments, but they're not discriminatory. And so you've got to be documenting your work environment, paying attention to what's happening to your work environment, pay attention to how you're treated versus other employees who are not people of color and not Black being treated, and document those things, because that's how you prove discrimination. Not just they want me to come back to work in the office and I think that's discrimination. No, it's not.
Right.
It's allowed to tell you to come back.
Right.
They say everybody got to come back. That's not discrimination.
Right. So the importance of getting your exit plan together. Right. Now, as we're winding down, Amarie, if there's a Black woman who's watching this right now, and she might be saying some version of this to herself, I'm not going to let them run me out of here or push me out of here. I fought too much. I fought too hard to get here. I'm going to stick it out, hang in there until I retire. I'm going to make them respect me, or I'm going to stay until my child graduates. What would you say to her?
I would tell her that she's thinking of it in the wrong way. I'm like, let them run you out of there. Just make sure they pay you if they discriminating against you. Make sure they put you a check on the way out the door if they're engaging in behavior that's illegal. If they are not, you need to have a strategy for how you are going to exit that job. Find another job, start figuring out whether you want to start a side business, what you want to do to create a 3 to 6 month strategy for how you're going to leave. There is no reason good enough to stay in a bad job. And there is no good job that discriminates against you, bullies you, engages in harassment, degrades you. Those are not good jobs. Need us to stop calling them jobs good. A good job doesn't treat you that way. I don't care how much money they're paying you. It is not a good job if you are being disrespected and mistreated and discriminated against in your job, or any of combination of those three things. It's not a good job. I don't care if it's $300,000 a year, $400,000 a year. It's not a good job. Ask me how I know. It's not a good job, people. So what you need to be doing is creating a plan for how you're going to leave and carefully documenting your workplace so that you can do an assessment of whether or not there's illegal treatment happening,
Mm.
behavior afoot, so that
Mhm.
you can use that to leverage leaving that job with some money. But
Yes.
don't sit there just languishing and saying, I'm going to stay till my retirement. I'm going to stay till my kid graduates. What good is it to your child if you're not there?
So true. And if
What
you're so broken, you're
heart
not even there. Your child's in a shell of you. And what are you modeling to your child?
What are
So
you
are you
modeling?
modeling to your child, you stay in situations where people abuse you, or you go some other place and you create your own stuff. What are you teaching your child? So that's
very,
important.
very important. Because as I said, I was very lucky to have a parent that modeled for me that you don't stay.
Yeah.
Right. But I realized very early on that other people didn't have that. Right.
Yeah.
And that a lot of other people were instead taught, go to college, get the good government job, get the good private sector job, and just
And stick it out.
Just keep your head down, stick it out. And
Yeah.
my advice now to young people is 3 years. That's it. They get 3 years, you move on to the next job, get a higher paying job, move on. 3 years, next one, 3 years. There's no 20, 30 years anymore.
Right.
Get you a good 401k and you roll that sucker. And you roll that sucker. You do not more than 3 years. 3 years is for you to learn anything that you need to learn to update your resume and move on to the next place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not unusual because it's very common now.
Yeah.
3 years, give them 3. And if they acting crazy, give them less than that. Right? Because I told you I was gone in 3 months because I'm not doing it. So don't give 3 years, more than 3 years. It's too long in a job. It's too long in a job. And so this 25 and 28, I stayed for 28 years, but I got my retirement money. And I read that and I just felt so sad. It was one of the saddest things I've ever read because I pushed through and I endured for 20 years. And the person said endured and I read it and I just thought that's horrible to stay someone for
what kind of life have you had for 28 years?
Yeah, I can't fathom that. And I really want us to get out of that mindset that there's better things. Life, I don't believe I am very much a student of Stephanie Perry. We are not here to work. We are not here to work. And if you're doing work, it should be work that makes you happy.
Yeah, and quoting Stephanie too, these jobs ain't loyal. And a job is not a good job if it's harming you. And if you're accessing your healthcare benefits because the job is making you sick, that's not a good job. It's not a good job.
Not only that, we were not put in this world to work. I really believe that. I'm a disciple of that now. And that if you are going to do work, it needs to be work that gives you joy, like the travel business does, or gives you pride, like this work does, because I know I'm helping other people. And so it needs to be something that brings some personal enjoyment if it's work and pride and enjoyment. And if it's not doing that, you need to find something else to do because life is too short.
Yeah.
Life is too short.
And not anything that makes you sick.
And it's making a lot of us sick. So it really is. I really believe that we didn't come here to just work and die.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to figure out if you're not enjoying your life, it is your responsibility to change that.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it takes. And it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks or what anybody else has to say. Because at the end of the day, at the end of your life, are you gonna have a life that you're proud of? And I can honestly say that I do have a life that I'm proud of and that I'm happy about. And I can say that even 10 years ago.
Wow.
Right? So I really want Black women to understand that your job doesn't define who you are. The point of a job is to have the money and the resources so
you can live your life.
Not anything else. Your job is not your life.
It's
right?
not supposed to destroy your life. It helps you live your life.
It allows you to do things that you want to do. And so it's not worth it to lock yourself into a job that's making you miserable because it's going to affect your ability to enjoy the other parts of your life that are way more important than that. And we have definitely been programmed as Americans, especially in this hyper-capitalist system, that we're only valuable if we're a cog in somebody else's wheel while they get to sit on their yacht. Because I travel, I see the big ass yachts. They get to they bring their yachts out in the summer while you back in some office with no windows, busting your behind. They're not on the Mediterranean. I just want y'all to know that. That's where they're at. So I'm just
living off your labor. Living their best life.
No, I want to be on the damn yacht too. I'm
Yeah,
not trying to be making myself sick and miserable so somebody else can be
yeah,
rich. And
yeah.
it's either you fight to build your dreams or you fight to build somebody else's. And when you're
So true.
fighting to stay in somebody else's job, that's literally what you're doing.
When they're abusing you, right?
You're letting
Terrorizing
them
you.
abuse you while they go live a good life and go sit on the yacht somewhere, and you up
Yeah,
there being miserable.
yeah. And in fact, I think in your video that you did, which was again superb, I think you said something like the employer is the one who wins, not you, because
What
you're
do you say?
overproducing.
Yep, because you're trying to prove yourself. So you're working harder and harder and harder and harder, and they don't like you anyway, right? You're working harder and harder and harder. They're benefiting from your labor, so they're
Right.
happy to take that, but they still gonna get rid of you if they don't want you there.
True.
Or they'll just let you stay and keep working harder and harder and harder till you crash. But
Ooh,
either way, it's not helping you.
it's not.
I just
It's
want us
not.
to put ourselves first and to do the
Yeah.
things that are good for us,
Yes.
nobody else.
Yes. So true. So true. So Emery, last question. Can you please share more about the services and products that you offer to help Black women, and how can they contact you?
So I provide one-to-one consulting and engagements for individuals who want to exit discriminatory hostile work environments with a negotiated separation with severance, aka their coins.
Mhm.
And I also have several guidebooks, and I'm writing others on my website. I just put one out that basically summarizes the 10 major workplace laws that exist in the United States, that I think every employee should know about. It's a roadmap to understanding your workplace rights, and it's now available on my website as well as on my YouTube. You can link to my online store to get it. I also have a documentation journal that I also provide people, because I really think documentation is key to proving discrimination in your workplace. And most people either don't do it or don't do it well. And so my documentation journal is designed to teach people, not only give people opportunity to document, but also has prompts in there that actually teaches you how to document effectively. And then, of course, I have an online master course. There's one that I've done with you as well, and one that I also do where I teach people how to exit a discriminatory workplace with cash, how to ask for an exit from a discriminatory hostile work environment with cash and actually get it. And you can access that on my on my website.
Mhm.
And I'm actually working right now. I've been working on it for a while. I'm kind of busy, people, on a course that teaches people how to negotiate separations with severance. Because it's great to be offered one, but it's also great to get exactly what you deserve in the process. So I'm putting together a course that will teach people, when they offer you a separation with severance, how to make sure that you're getting the best offer, and how to counter what you are presented with, and how to push for what you actually want. So those are some of the things that I do. And of course, I'm on YouTube and on social media, where I provide HR tips and video content to help employees understand how American, not just American but workplace, how human resources functions. Because human resources functions in a very specific way, and it functions that way everywhere. I recently
Yeah.
helped an employee who was in the United Kingdom successfully negotiate using the same strategies I use with Americans, because human resources functions in a very specific way. And if you live in a country that has any laws about workplace rights,
Mhm.
you can do what I teach my clients to do. So she was able to walk away with a very nice package, and she lives in the United Kingdom. So these principles are the same if you're dealing with a human resources department. I advise people. I've advised an employee who was working in a country in Africa. I've
Mhm.
advised people all over the world, because these principles are the same when you're dealing with
Yeah.
human HR, right? So because I don't give legal advice anyway. I am an attorney, but I don't provide legal advice. I'm
Mhm.
providing you advice and consultation based on my 30 plus years working in HR, and how I
Mhm.
understand HR functions, and how you can leverage that information to
Mhm.
exit these workplaces without having to hire a lawyer, without having to go into court, without having to file an EEOC claim. In
Mhm.
many cases, you can execute these strategies on your
Mhm.
own
Mhm.
and get the result that you want. In many cases, it doesn't work every single time, but it
Mhm.
works a lot of the time.
Mhm.
So it's really important for employees to understand that they have rights, and they have a right to assert these rights when employers are violating them. And they're violating them all over the place right now. People are just
Mhm.
feeling really emboldened because of what's going on in the United States to just this is hell.
Mm.
They're really feeling themselves
Mm.
in these workplaces.
So
But
true.
right now, we still have rights.
Mm-hmm.
Right now. And so I would really it would behoove us to exercise them while we still have them.
Yes.
Well, now,
Yes.
how long are we going to have them?
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's why I put out the ebook, because I want people to know these laws actually exist and how and what they mean. You know, what office in the government you complain to about some of these things, how to file a claim, how to recognize his employer is violating those rights. So all of those things are in the ebook that I just put out, because I just think it's critically important, especially right now. And it doesn't have every single law, but it has the 10 laws that I think are the most important for people to know about.
Those are excellent resources. So women, Black women, as you are listening to this, please check out the resources that Amarie has. She is brilliant. She said, straight no chaser, right? She's going to tell you straight. So please check out these resources. So again, if you are a Black woman and you are sitting up here thinking, I am not going to be running out of this place, I hope you've listened to this discussion and you reevaluate that statement. If you're saying that to yourself, check out the resources that Amarie talked about. Check out the video. Oh, what about your coaching directory?
I actually had to close the coaching directory because there were not enough people using it. So the coaching directory does not exist.
Okay.
And honestly, I was doing too much. So I had to just focus on the two. I can do two things. I can't do three things. So I now have my travel business, which is completely separate from this. And I have my HR consulting business.
Yeah. Okay. So check out all the resources that Amarie has. Please do so prior to getting on a PIP, right? Yes. And then check out the masterclass that Amarie and I did together. So it is Save Yourself and Channel Your Inner Harriet so you can save your sanity and your coins, okay? So I'll talk about the psychological aspects of that in terms of addressing the mental health implications of being in a toxic, hostile job. And then Amarie gives you all the tips about getting your coins and all that kind of stuff, right? So check out the replay for that. And any last words you want to say to the community before we wind down, Amarie?
I would just, I want to reiterate that, when you say, I'm not going to let them run me out of here, I beseech you to run out of there, but on your own terms. Run like the devil is chasing you. Do it on your own terms, right? Don't fight to stay, fight to leave.
I love that. Perfect. And community, I just want to say to you, I'm not able to read the chat right now because I'm in a yoga teacher training program right now. And so that's why I'm casually dressed and all that kind of stuff. So I need to get back to my class. So I appreciate, though, that you have tuned in. If you have more questions to me or Amarie, please reach out to us. I will put all of her information in the description section. Please subscribe to Amarie's channel. Please subscribe to my channel. Also turn the notification bell where you will know that when both of us go live. Also, please give this video a thumbs up and share this video with at least 2 other Black women. So thank you everyone for watching. Amarie, if you could stay on for one moment, and I will see you all later. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.